It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. I am thrilled to finally be having Shanay Fulton on today. We had a little miscommunication about whether she was going to do it, and she was, and I didn't see it, and she's here now. So this is the one that we've been waiting for because we she did up and then we had to reschedule and I was like, I love this video. I want everyone to see, like, this is the person who made the video. Let's see.
I'm
It's Oh wait,
here.
I can't see you, but that's okay.
You can't
That's okay. I
see
don't know why
me.
Instagram sometimes does this, but thank you so much for coming, Shanae.
Thank you for
I'm glad you're
having me.
feeling better. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're feeling better because I know you were sick a couple of times,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to tell people, like, you and I actually met, but not really, like 4 years ago when we were doing the testimony for Jennifer's Law, right?
Yes. Can you see me yet?
I can't see you. I'm not going to see you. Don't worry
Oh
about it. I
no.
know. It's
It's
okay.
so funny. I see you.
I know. I don't know why this sometimes happens. I'll just act like I see you.
Let me see. Press camera.
Don't
Is
worry
that
about it. Don't worry
no?
about it. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, what do you remember what speaker you were in that testimony? I think I was speaker number 8.
I feel like I was double digits.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
know it, yeah, I was waiting for hours. I
Really?
think did we get on like 9 something in the morning? I want to say I probably spoke at like 12,
Oh,
1 because I think they went to like break and then I came back on.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So I feel like I saw you somewhere, like that's how we sort of connected, but
Yeah.
it doesn't
No.
matter. I'm glad we did. I'm glad Jennifer's Law passed.
Yes,
And
same.
yeah, we're really lucky because we were the third state to expand our legal definition of domestic violence to
Mhm.
include all that coercive control. And I think Massachusetts was the last state. They just became I think state number 7 over the summer
Oh
in
wow.
24. Yeah. Yeah, so it's like a wave that's happening. But anyway, I know today we came up with the title From Homelessness to Happiness, and you did that incredible video a couple of weeks ago. But before we even get into who you are, can you just like quick like opinion, how common are housing issues when related to domestic violence victims? Is
I
this a
think it
big
is,
deal?
yeah, it's very common. And the reason why I feel it's so common is because automatic, when you go through domestic violence, more often than not, your finances are tied within that relationship. You more than likely don't have your own money.
Yep.
You're pooling everything with the significant other. So when you guys have to separate, they're usually the one that is good. And then you have to figure out where you're going. And you're probably going to have to go into a domestic violence shelter, or in my case, I actually went into a homeless shelter. And sometimes, if you're fortunate, you have somebody that you can stay with. But trying to find a place to live can be hard if you don't have the money to do it because it was tied up in that relationship. So
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
kind of what
that's
it was for me.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the main reasons people stay is
Mhm.
financial reasons. They can't afford to leave. And it's so insensitive when people say things like, well, why didn't you just leave? Well, it's
Not
not
that
that easy at all.
easy.
Yeah,
No, it's not.
yeah. So why don't you now introduce yourself formally and then we'll get to it.
Okay. So I am Shanay Fulton. I am an advocate for everything as far as like housing, homelessness, children. I advocate to help actually moms. And for me, I help moms with domestic violence and families in general. And I do a nonprofit that I'm the director of, but I also start as a parent volunteer. So we work with a lot of single parent families who have homelessness and housing issues. It's really supposed to be geared towards workforce, but the housing part comes into that a lot. A lot of legal stuff like this come into play. I'm also an elected official, so I'm elected for planning and zoning, which we do housing as well. And I'm also a first-time author. My book is right behind me, and I'm a mom.
Yeah. Wow. Long, long, long list. Not
Yeah,
surprised how many hats you wear.
yeah,
Um, um,
literally and figuratively.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I know in our cases, in our community, because my clients are all dealing with extremely high conflict divorce, separations,
Mhm.
custody battles, and co-parenting hell, we always say. So, homelessness and housing is a really big issue for women and men too
Mhm.
sometimes. Can you talk about some of the myths people have about housing when it comes to domestic violence? Like besides that, oh, it's you can just leave and find a place to go. Like, what are some of the common things you think that people have gotten wrong about this issue?
That you can just easily one getting into a shelter. You
Hmm.
can't. It's not that easy. And then when you do get into a shelter, automatically you're going to get into housing. That's still
Okay.
not the case.
All right. Tell us about what is it
Yeah,
like when you're thinking about leaving, what should you consider when going into a shelter?
you should definitely. I can't even really say you have to consider like the location, right? You're not gonna know. You're
Hmm.
gonna definitely have to call 211. There's gonna be a wait list. You would be considered an emergency, yes, because it is a domestic violence and you do have children, but you're also vying for a spot with someone else who's just experiencing housing and may not have a domestic violence situation. And it's really, really hard to get in, especially when you have children. I
Hmm.
find that people that are single, sometimes they can get in a little bit easier because there's not a lot of shelters for families. And I'm finding that out even more now. I thought that, oh, it wasn't a big deal, but the more I work with families, the more I see that it's really hard to find family shelters. More often than not, it has to be more so like a domestic violence type of ordeal. So people just automatically think, oh, yeah, I can get out of the situation. I can just easily get into a shelter. And then when I get in, I will easily find a place to live. Again, that's not the case. And then when you do get into that place, then you have to make sure that one, you have the finance to be able to afford it. So, it's so many different things that overlap with it. You have to make sure you have that job to be able to afford wherever you get placed into. Your child care becomes a part of it because oftentimes you're running with your children. So that's another factor. Then you want to make sure that you have the transportation. So all these things are stuff that I experienced.
Hmm.
You want to make sure that where you go, that they have like a clause that if they're aware that you came from that type of situation, so they're knowing that means that they probably should have some protective measures in place. For me, when I moved into my transitional housing, we didn't have cameras in the place,
Hmm.
and I was like, this is kind of scary for me. My ex could pop up at any time, and it has happened. And it wasn't until another situation with a friend of mine who was actually unalived in our complex, and I was a part of um, the whole like advocacy behind it and getting help. And I had to let the police department know we now need cameras. And it wasn't until then that they put the cameras. But I had already been living there for about 5, 6 years before that even happened. So I was like,
Wow.
and she came from a domestic violence situation herself. But it's stuff like that. You have to be mindful. There's so many different things to put into place that people don't even think about.
Yeah, when you talk about having to move out and that it's harder with kids, I'm thinking about with Jennifer's Law, the first Jennifer it was named after Jennifer Magnano. I think part of her issue was trying to get away from her ex, and she had I believe, a teenage son, or at least a tween age son, and she couldn't find any shelters in Connecticut to go to. So she had to go all the way to California because that was the only place that took
Wow.
boys her son's
Yeah.
age. Do you
Yeah.
know if that matters still in shelters? Like, because a lot of times it'll say women's shelter, but if
Hmm.
you have a son, let's say, who's a teenager who lives with you, is that an
Wow.
issue, or, do you know anything
So
about that?
that's interesting because I went into the shelter with my oldest son, but he was small at the time. He was 6, so it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a big deal. But in that shelter, honestly, there weren't any women that had teenage boys. They had either small boys or they had teenage girls.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually something that I never realized, but I could see how that would be an issue because I know that there was another woman that she lived there with me, but she was there with her daughter and her husband. Her husband had to go downstairs. But again, I wasn't in a domestic violence shelter. I ended up having to get placed into a regular homeless shelter. So
Mm-hmm.
there were men on the first floor and then the women on the second floor. So we had to pass by the men in order to go upstairs to where we were, which again, that's scary
Yeah.
considering some of us came from very similar situations and you're going through these spaces with your children. Um, so yeah, like they did separate the husbands and wives. So I'm going to assume if they did that, that more than likely they're separating the moms and sons as well.
Yeah. Now, another thing that often comes up in situations like our clients are when they're leaving, they have pets. And it's very hard to find shelters that take pets. But for most people who have pets, the pet is a member of the family, and they don't want to leave the pet behind because they're afraid that the pet could be hurt or worse. And Chris and I recently went to this dog show, and they said they had a nonprofit. I think it was like Purple Leashes or something, and it was about building domestic violence shelters that would accommodate pets. Have you heard of
I
anything like
like that.
that?
I've never heard of that, but when I did work for Columbus House, and I worked there as a resident, what do you call it, resident specialist or something, like a
Mhm.
resident advisor, and I was helping with the homelessness population. At one point, we had people that had pets, and we were like, "What do we do with this?" But we were, I think, the first year we weren't allowed, and then we went to another location where we were able to have the dog
Mhm.
there. So I know that that's, and I believe she actually had to go through asking some of like the legislators to
Mhm.
let her allow that. But in Columbus House, that they didn't even allow that. And I didn't live in Columbus House. I lived in their transition housing, but it wasn't called Columbus House when I first moved in.
Mhm.
But while I was still living in their transitional housing, I actually worked in their shelter with the homeless population. But yeah, that was a big thing as far as not having pets there. Like I said, again, this particular resident was able to ask the legislators to kind of give her like a pass, whatever her
Mhm.
reasoning was. But yeah, they don't allow that. But I do agree because I mean I don't have a dog anymore, but your dog is a part of your family. At least for me,
Mhm.
dog,
Yeah.
cat, whatever. It's a part of your family. And I know they can even be used as like emotional support. So
Yeah.
that could be something that's another trauma, that you're coming with children to a shelter. They're like they already lost, one parent. They watched certain things happen and now
Mhm.
they have to lose a pet, which may have brought some type of emotional stability to them.
Right.
But I don't know about any other shelters, but yeah, I know that particular shelter that wasn't allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. Well,
Mhm.
do you want to talk a little bit about your own story? Because it's so inspiring and fascinating.
Sure. If you have a question, I can answer as far as a question. Or do you just want me to dive
All right.
in? To,
Yeah, why don't you start with like, um, how did you handle? So, as you know, I'm a certified domestic violence advocate, and we always think about safety planning as one of the first steps when you leave. And often with our clients that we call babies at the very beginning who are still in the relationship, and we don't usually meet too many people like that. They usually find us much further along down the road. We say, the most important thing is your safety, and you really should come up with two plans. One is like a long-term plan, like if you can take your time and get your stuff together. And the other is an emergency plan, like something happens, you have to leave fast. So with you, what happened? Like, were you able to like plan before you left? Did you know, or did you have to flee?
it was I want to say a little mixture of both. Honestly, it had been going on for years. And so I feel like every other year we were in court for domestic violence. He'd have to be removed from the home.
Mhm.
I'm in the home with both of my boys at a point. Then my youngest son that I share with him would have to go to another country. So they would go with his dad's family in another country. And so now that's making me say, okay, I have to start figuring out what to do. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out, okay, I need money, but I'm only able to work during the hours that he felt was necessary,
Mhm.
or he would
Yeah,
be he would be able to pick me up or drop me off. I just had to basically work within the constraints of what he wanted.
right.
So then it means that I'm more than likely not going to have the income that I would need to get away. So when I left with $90.
$90.
That's nothing. ninety
Did you have
dollars.
a
Um,
car?
I got a car because his mom told him to give me a car from one of his siblings. So I got gifted a car. But then that car ended up having some issues and then it died on me. So I didn't have a car for some time after that. And I had to call on the same person that was my abuser, the same person that I had protective orders in place. So it was like, oh my God. And I'm here in a state where I have no family, which made it absolutely worse. So even in my fleeing, so the point where I had to flee, it was because the house that we lived in was under foreclosure.
Mhm.
And because it's under foreclosure, it's like I'm still there. I didn't know at the time that I could have reported that utilities were being cut off because
Really?
I had a child in the house. I could have reported that, but I didn't. These are things that you don't
But
know.
this is
So I'm
important
literally,
for people to realize. Like, is that
yeah,
something
I
that
did
is
not know
local,
that.
or is that a general thing that people should realize?
They should know that because then it could be that either he's cutting it off or that it just gets cut off. I'm going to assume that he was allowing it to be cut off because it's like, well, the house in foreclosure, but he still had stuff there,
Hmm.
but was also living with other family, you know, throughout the state. So it's like, so now you're leaving, you have my son in another country, and then you're able to go off, and I'm still in that home. But then another one of his siblings was also in the house with me and my youngest son that's no relation to him. I'm sorry, my oldest son that's no relation to him.
Hmm.
But again, you're trying to plan these things, but it's like, what do I do? Where do I go? Again, I don't know what to do. It wasn't until there was like some paperwork that came that said that, you know, the house had to be like basically evacuated. I still think I probably could have stayed and I would have gotten a little bit more help, but I did not know this. I'm like, okay, this house has nothing to do with me. I don't know. It's in him and his family's name. And I'm just in my naivete, I did not know that. So
Well, who would?
I ended up,
Like, how would
yeah,
anybody
like,
know?
you know, no one knows that.
Right.
You don't even think of that, you know. And now that I know, I'm like, when I work with families, I'm like, these are things that, yes, you have rights, you know, regardless if the child belongs to them or not. That's putting a child in harm's way,
Yeah.
so you're gonna get the help that you didn't even realize that you'd be able to get. But yeah, I did, you know, call 211. I had friends that was like, you have to get out of here. So at one point I ended up going into a hotel, and I was working in that hotel.
Hmm.
So they allowed me to stay there, but my checks were going to the hotel. So, I mean, but I had a place. And
Right.
it was close enough where I can get my son to school still,
Hmm.
but it was also where he could find me if he wanted to.
I
So
was
it's like I'm still
going to
feeling
say,
like,
was he looking for you? Like, were you,
oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, just recently I was looking through some of like, you have you ever heard of Our Family Wizard?
are you kidding? That's all
Okay.
we like. Everyone
So
has that in our world. Yeah.
I actually found out about Our Family Wizard, and that's how I was able to have us be connected. Let him tell it. Oh, you know, my attorney. No, I have the text, I have the emails, I have everything to say that that was my idea.
Yeah.
But whatever. So yeah, even in that, I mean, he would say things like, "Oh, I saw you at this gas station." Like, now you sound a little lot of crazy.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of things like that, and it was scary. You know, I worked in a hotel, another hotel that I ended up being in, and I remember the front desk telling me, you know, they would allow him to come in and out. And I remember I went to my room one day, and I'm working at this other hotel that's nowhere near now where we were, where
Hmm.
this happened. And I'm in this hotel, and I go in my room, and he's laying in the dark in the room on one of the beds. And I was like, what
Oh
the
my God. I can't
yeah, and
believe
I
you
had to say
didn't have
something to
like
the
a
front
panic
desk,
attack.
yeah, and the person at the front desk was like, "Oh, I didn't know. I thought it was okay because he's coming here before." I'm like, "No, he shouldn't have been allowed in my room. Like, absolutely not." Again, that's something that I could have probably reported.
Hmm.
Another reason why I did it is because I worked there and I was living there.
Right. Right.
So it's like, if
Right. It's like you
I
want to make
report this,
waves.
then it's like, yeah, just like, okay, I can get it. I don't want them to retaliate, but then also, then where do I go to live? So it's like
Mhm.
all of that. Then I had
Yeah.
to kind of just buckle down and say, I have to just go into the shelter. And I was trying to avoid it. So I would live in hotels and give them my paychecks to be able to have a space to live. So I was like, I don't want to live in a shelter. I refuse. I just
Hmm.
had to say one day, I just have to. And I got in touch with 211, and that's when they placed me. But they placed me into a homelessness shelter. So it wasn't a domestic violence shelter. But I was
Hmm.
actually in the same town of which it happened. And then I know that he found me there because it's like he would drive around, he found my car. I was like, oh my God. Like he knew everything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did when you were in the homeless shelter, like were there, what was it like there? Can you describe what like other families, but was there anyone else there for domestic violence that you knew of?
Yeah, there were people. Okay, so like I was saying, when you walk in, you have to walk in and check in with the resident advisor
Hmm.
downstairs. But there's tables like a cafeteria style, and there would be men that just sleep on the tables or sitting at the tables. Yeah, and then and that's because of those are the ones that were waiting for a bed. And then the back area was where the beds were for the men.
Hmm.
But in order for the women to come in, they had a back door. They just didn't allow us to go through it. So you had to go through the front door, pass through like hundreds of men, walk up 3 flights of stairs. And a lot of times, if I'm, you know, at the time I was working in a hotel and I'm having to pick my son up from a friend of mine who lived nearby, or if I was able to have him stay in the hotel with me while I worked, I'm coming in, it's late, I'm carrying him upstairs. We weren't allowed to use the elevator. That's another
Hmm.
thing. So you're walking up all these flights of stairs carrying a child or children, because some of them had multiple
Yeah.
children. And now you get away to the top. Now you have to pass through where the single women were to go to the other side where the families were. So it was just it was a lot. Like I said, there were other women in there that came from domestic violence ordeals as well. There were.
Yeah.
I don't
Was it,
remember how many, but there were some.
were
Yeah.
you all in like one big, like in my head, I'm trying to picture what it was like. Did you have any privacy?
Oh, that's who had it. Only the women with children. So the single men had just bunk
Hmm.
beds. The single women had bunk beds. But the families, which was just the mom and child or children, we had our own room.
Hmm.
So when I first got there, I had a room all the way at the back by the elevators, and it was a room that had 4 beds in it. And then there was another family coming in, and they made me move out of that room and give it to them. And then there was a family that had moved out of the first room,
Hmm.
and when they moved out, I took over that room with my son. So now that room had 2 beds, but they
Hmm.
had, I want to say, 3 bathrooms. Yes, 3 or 4 bathrooms, and we had to. Everybody was like 8 or 9 rooms, and we all shared the bathroom.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's like you had to make sure you got in at a certain time. And then we had floor duties where we had to clean the kitchen or we had to clean the bathrooms, and your name was on. And if you got caught not having done it, you could be evicted from the shelter. It was like it felt. I don't know what it's like to be in prison, but it felt very prison like. Even like the kitchen was closed down at a certain time. Fortunately, I worked in a hotel that served really good food, so I'd get the food from the hotel and bring it
Mhm.
there, so I'd have something to eat.
Yeah.
Like you weren't allowed to have a fridge or a microwave in your room. It was things like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so how long were you there? And then what prompted the move to the DV shelter?
I never went to a DV shelter.
Oh, you
That
never
was
did.
that was the home. Yeah, that was the homelessness shelter. I never went to a DV
Right,
shelter.
right,
I
right.
lived in
So,
yeah.
so,
So
but
I
so
lived
what was the
in
next move?
Okay, so when I left from the house that I shared with him, I was there for months into the from like I want to say August until like December. So it was cold, frigid cold in there.
Mhm.
Left out of there, went into a comfort inn, and I lived there for a couple of months before I had a coworker that allowed me to live with her in her living room,
Mhm.
with my son. And then I had to leave there because my ex would pop up, and then it was too much drama for her, and so she was like, we can't do this anymore. And I was like, oh my god. And so then I had to leave her, and then I went to another hotel, which is another one that I ended up working in. This one was in Weathersfield. I lived there for a while also working there and at another nearby hotel. So I was between the two, but working at both, but living in one. And then I called 211, and that's when they placed me in the shelter. I got in the shelter, and I actually got in on his birthday. So January 16th, which is why I put that. January 16th, I got in that shelter, and I moved out June 30th because I signed a lease for transitional housing July 3rd.
Mhm.
And then I
Wow.
lived in that transitional housing. I forgot the name of the company that it was, but eventually it became Columbus House sometime after me
Mhm.
living there. And I lived there for 6 years.
6 years. Wow. What was
Yes.
it like for your kids while, being in a situation like this, do you think?
So my oldest endured everything with me. The one that I share with him, he was in and out of the country. Then I'm battling in court to even keep my son, and
Mhm.
having him make up stories and say, "Oh, I'm not showing up for court." No, I'm showing up for court. I also have a job.
Yeah.
You are unemployed, so obviously you have all the time in the world, and you have the money to afford an attorney somehow. But you're saying you're unemployed. I don't have money for an attorney, so I'm having to go through all of that, and my kids are watching. I'm having visitation as though I'm like the abuser. I'm like, this same court uh, put protective orders on him.
Yeah.
Make that make sense. But obviously, it's because we were both pro se at the time. Now he has an
Mhm.
attorney, of course. And a lot of it I felt like was because I'm considered in poverty,
Mhm.
and a lot of it I did feel like it was racial discrimination as well.
Mhm.
And I'm not gonna lie about
Yeah.
that. Um,
No. No.
I've said it so many times, and there's so many reasons why I feel that way. But yeah, it was really hard. So my children having to see that, and then another reason why I was so happy to say that I have an apartment. Like obviously he knew where I was. Why are you filing papers to take my child from me? You're filing to the shelter that I'm living in. How do you even know I'm in a shelter? Again, stalking me. It's not like
Right.
I'm saying, hey, yeah, write me, come visit. No, you're not supposed to know where I am.
Right.
So if you're finding that out, it's because you're stalking me to find out where I am. I'm trying to flee you. So yeah, it was a lot of that, and I think it put a lot of strain on my children. My oldest son to this day does not like to talk about any of it. It's almost like he acts like it's out of sight, out of mind,
Mhm.
which is frustrating because he just doesn't like to talk about it. He's like, all right, that's in the past. I don't want to talk about it, which tells me there's a
Mhm.
lot more trauma there.
Mhm.
And then my son with my abuser, um, he has told me sometimes like, oh, that didn't happen. And I'm like, oh, your dad must have really put something in your head. So it's like, now, here you go, read this, and he's having to see it.
Mhm.
Or it's like, if you see something online, we know it's a lie because here's the actual documentation to say otherwise. So it's
Yeah.
like, it was just a lot that went on, a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like from one nightmare to another,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So when did things, so I mean, you kept it together the whole time. You were still like holding down multiple jobs, making sure you had roofs over your kids' heads. Like,
Hmm.
when did things start turning around to like you getting out of the just survival mode, do you think?
Ooh. Um, I feel like I was literally in survival mode up until probably like the pandemic.
Hmm.
And all started in, I think the first proceeding was 2012.
Wow. So
Yeah.
8 years.
And by the pandemic, and even then, it's like, oh, the pandemic happened. It was any excuse to say, oh, he can't come. Yeah, I can't bring him because I don't want him to get COVID.
Oh, meaning
Okay.
he wouldn't bring him to you.
Yeah, he'll say, oh, because he's going to get COVID.
Uh,
Okay.
um,
So he would just make any excuse, parental alienation, um, just to say anything. And then he would finally come, and it's like, okay, now the restrictions are lifted. So now he's able to come. And then, now I'm having to go back. It's like he would always try to find anything to say why he can't come, like anything. Um, and then I want to say up until 2 years ago. So now it's been almost 2 years. I haven't even seen my son.
yeah, I don't know if I told you this, Sinead, but the book that we're currently working on is how to handle when your ex is turning your child against you, and
Hmm.
interfering with your parenting time is like that's huge
Yeah.
in terms of
Oh,
how they
yeah.
do it, where they violate the parenting agreement, and then it's like that becomes like the status quo. Oh, but he hasn't seen you in so long, so he's not comfortable with you because you're a stranger. Blah
Oh,
blah 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 blah.
I
Right?
heard that. I've definitely heard that. And
Mhm.
honestly, the last time my son was here, I went out with both my kids and a friend of mine who's an officer, and my son was just running. He was like, "Brrr," like everything you can say, and I'm like, I know more than likely he had to tell his father that happened, and so now when to say like his father knows he's supposed to like go back at a certain time. He wants to show up, and I'm like, you're showing up at a pickup and drop off, and I clearly put in our family visit that it's my parenting time, and he will be returning this particular date because this is what is stipulated in our court order. And he
Mhm.
wanted to defy that and act like he gonna call the cop. I don't have time for that. So again, you're calling cops for what? You chose not to read it. I sent it to you 30 days ago. You know how it shows you the date and time you sent it and the date and time that it was read. So
Mhm.
he chose to read it, I want to say 3 weeks later, but it was already, he had read it and still chose to defy it.
Right.
So it's like, I don't even understand. And then, now it's like I have to negotiate when I'm going to bring him back and how. And then I chose to say, okay, well, I'm going on a day that's not the actual day, and I'm going to a location that's not the location. Again, compromising. I'm always the one compromising, but he can't seem to do that. Like he's allergic to compromising.
Yeah.
And so that happens, and that was the last time I saw my son.
Oh my God. As you're saying that, I'm thinking that in our community, which often deals with the same
Mhm.
kinds of stuff, just different details, uh, that the threat that an abuser makes when you are ready to go, or
Mhm.
they go, is like, I'm going to leave you homeless,
Mhm.
penniless, and childless. And the childless part is
Yeah.
taking your kid away,
Yeah.
turning them against you. It's like they want to
Oh yeah.
take everything and punish you for leaving
Yeah.
or for the end of the relationship.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And again, almost to the point of trying to put my kids against each other at a
Hmm.
point. Like, oh well, he doesn't feel comfortable around him, and then this has happened. It's like, oh Lord.
Yeah.
Like it's just anything, just using anything. And I'm like, or now I start dating and making it seem like, oh, my child isn't like who I'm dating, but then he'll date.
Right.
Or bringing that up in court and saying, well, can we have, I think he, like one of our first cases, our first hearings, he told the court advocate, oh, well, when we start dating, I think that I should have to meet whoever she dates. And I remember the court person saying, that's none of your business.
Right.
Like, no. And this person is actually not even in the legal system anymore for that very reason. She's like, it was just too much. And I ran into her with both of my kids, um, like 2 years ago actually, and she's like, "Oh my!" And I was looking at her like she looked so familiar, and then my partner went over to the table and said, "Is your name such and such?" And the lady goes, "Yes." And she looked at me, I looked at her, and I just bawled in tears because I was like, she was the only person in the court case that helped me, the only person, and they removed her from the case,
Um,
and then ended up switching her to a different courthouse, and now she's not even in the legal field anymore. And I'm like, yeah, because it's too much. Like you're trying to tell me they have to break up families. And I remember that day when he did that. And she said, no, that is not right. And then he decides he wants to go date or and do whatever he's doing. But I didn't have to meet whoever it is. But you feel like you have to do that with me. I don't care. Please be with somebody. Like get away from me. Like
right,
please.
right. It's a
But
total double standard, but with
yeah.
these people, even when they find someone else, they still torment you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it has happened. And then I want to say now, within the last 2 years, he's obviously not bothering me, right? He's not sending me messages and doing all that. But what he's doing is withholding the child when clearly he has no legal grounds to do so. And
Yeah.
when even like DCF has said, well, there's nothing that we're not finding if there's anything wrong, that she's doing anything wrong. This is like, no. And so he did it anyway. But again, the longer you keep it, then it's like now I have to try to go into court and I have to come up with money. So again, that's another way of financially abusing,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
another form of coercive control. Oh, I know that
Exactly.
you may not have the money, or if you do, I'm going to make it so that it's so difficult. And it's like, are you serious? Who wants to come up with money to have to try to fight you for a child again? Like, not that I can't afford it now, but it's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to keep doing this.
Well,
It's
yeah, I
ridiculous.
mean that's the whole thing. Like legal abuse is our specialty because I spent 10 years in the court system in Connecticut and New York and represented myself for 7 years. And it's not even just the money that it would take to pay an attorney, it's your time and your,
Hmm.
the time that you can't work and the time that
Yeah.
affects your income and your
Yeah.
energy and how it becomes so consuming of, we call it getting back in the muck with
Yes.
someone like that. You know,
Oh yes.
it
I
affects
tell people that all the time. I'm so happy you
everything.
said that. Yeah, yeah. When you said like your energy, that's exactly why I even wrote the book Peace, Happiness, Love. I felt like I was being I had no peace. Like, oh my God. And people just think peace is just peace and quiet. No, for me it was peace. I felt so restless. I felt like distraught. Every 5 minutes I'm crying. I felt like I can't even work without it being on my mind. I'd be at work, and at the time I'm working in the school system. So I have to be there at a certain time and I have to leave at a certain time. I'm having to cut my days short. I'm not salaried. I'm hourly, so I'm missing days, but he's allegedly not working. So he has all the time in the world, but I
Right.
don't. And so now I have to figure out how to get from, I'm in Middletown, Connecticut. So get from Middletown, Connecticut, all the way to Waterbury, where he is. That's ridiculous. Or say, can we just meet at least halfway? Like halfway from Waterbury to Meriden, it's 15 minutes. Halfway from Middletown to Meriden, it's 10 minutes. Let's meet. No, I can't do that. So he intentionally made it difficult and made me have to be the one to drive my son to school. Then it was like, oh, well, she can't do it. Well, we have to take days away. Again, he has all of the free time. So again, that's ridiculous to me. But he intentionally did that
Yeah.
to make me not have the income. And so now I'm having to say, well, I can't do this. They're emailing me while I'm in work. So again, for
Hmm.
me, that's another thing. You have your attorney. Now I'm gonna say your attorney's harassing me. Because why are you sending me emails while I'm supposed to be working? You're asking me to pay you child support, or you're asking me to do certain things, but how can I get the money when you are bothering me while I'm supposed to be working and you're constantly having me miss days of work for court? So if I say I can't be there, well, I'm sorry, I can't get out of work. Oh, we're going to fine you because you don't come. So
Yep. It's a catch
again,
22. It's a
yeah,
catch
it's
22.
manipulation. It's all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know, like everything you're saying, I know there's people watching now and later, are like our clients in particular who'll be like, that it was so me as well.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's the same kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, and they're gonna formulate whatever story. They're gonna make up everything, and you know that it's not the truth. And I'm sure the attorneys and the court system knows it's not the truth, but they're paying, right? So it's the truth because they're paying. You're representing yourself while they have the money. Oh, absolutely, they're gonna go with the person who's paying them. I'm
Yeah.
like, it just
And
making
it's
up
like in
everything.
our country, like everyone has a right to be heard, and so
Hmm.
there's motion after motion after motion. You have to keep like again taking that time and money and energy
And
away.
filing waivers because I'm like, now I have to file a waiver. Then if my waiver gets denied, then it's like I gotta find how to come up with $175 to pay for a motion, and then I
Hmm.
and then I have to basically be an attorney, which is why I said, oh yeah, I'm just gonna have to take the LSATs because I'm gonna have to just be an attorney at this point because this is ridiculous. I'm like,
I feel you.
ridiculous.
I was like, I didn't become a lawyer. I just became like a high conflict divorce strategist because I like it better.
Yeah, and I end up saying I'm going to be a whole politician, which is what I do
Yeah.
now,
So,
because
so
I'm like,
you,
we're going to change these laws.
right. So you also turned what a friend of mine said, you turned your mess into your message.
Yes, I sure did. Not that I'm not considering going back for the law part, because I ended up now I have my master's, but it's in public administration. But I was already elected before I even got my master's. But now everyone's like, "Are you going to get your doctorate? Are you going to be an attorney?" I'm like, I don't even know which one I want. Part of me wants both,
Yeah, I
because
know. I
it's
mean, you're
been like
already
that.
juggling all this other stuff
I'm like,
successfully. Like,
yeah, and I know that I can do it as a double major. So I'm like, oh, I probably will do
I'm
that, you know,
sure you
because
will.
I would love to.
You'll do
At
it
the same time,
three.
yeah, but it's like at the same time when you're doing that, you start feeling like, oh, I can't stand family law because there's so many gray areas, and I'm so bothered by it. I would rather do mediation. Like I can sit there with you guys. I'm not trying to litigate and be in the courtroom, and I know that my client is dead
Mhm.
wrong, but I have to try to find some way to make you look right. I would feel terrible. Like I'm like I don't know if I could do that
I know.
morally. You know, I feel like morally I couldn't. That's why I'm like I look at the fact that the people I had in this case, I'm like, your morals are so off. Like, how
Oh,
could you even? That's crazy to me. You have no morals
yeah.
at all.
Yeah, I remember looking at one of my ex's attorneys and being like, "I hope your daughter marries someone like your client, like my ex, your client, because of the way
And
like
I've said
that
the
you
same.
just." Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible thing, but I was just like, "How could you be defending this person
Hmm.
for years and encouraging them to not comply with court orders?" It was just
Oh
disgusting.
yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm like, he had a female attorney, and he actually used two of
Yep.
them. So I'm like, and you're married with
Yeah.
children.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. But back to the housing stuff. So we talked about how if someone has utilities turned off, that's something that you could report and hopefully get help.
Yes.
And then all of the obstacles you have to overcome to get out of one of these relationships, especially with housing. Are there other things that you could share, either from your own experience or working with the people that you do, that people should know about that might be helpful when they're leaving, or what they can do if they don't know where to go?
Um, I want to say honestly, calling 211 from the very beginning. I didn't do that.
Okay.
I really didn't. And I think it was because I was nervous
Hmm.
and I didn't know what I could do. Had I called 211 from the very beginning, I more than likely would have been able to have an attorney, like a pro bono attorney. I probably would have.
Wow.
I could have had, yeah, I probably could have had that. I'm like, okay, this is a domestic violence situation. I could have used all of those different avenues. I also could have mentioned, okay, that I'm in this house. He's cut off this. I could have provided proof of the protective orders.
Hmm.
Like I think the last one I had was like 2019. Um,
Yeah. Wow.
so to be able to show things like that and say, this is what I'm experiencing. And I more than likely would have been given a little bit more help. Like trying to get legal aid, I couldn't get legal aid. And I was making like no money. I think I was making like $9 an hour. I couldn't get legal aid. I was like, how? How? But I would say, yeah, definitely calling 211 and asking for assistance with housing, asking for assistance with like utilities. They a lot of times your city that you become homeless in will be able to pay for housing somewhere. Like, and I just
Wow.
found this out recently because I also am a part of my city's housing task force. So I found out that if someone has an emergency, like let's say they have a fire, they're displaced in some way, the city
Hmm.
will actually pay for you to stay in a hotel. And I'm like,
Wow.
I didn't know that. Like, and
Yeah. I mean,
at the time I was in Meriden, Connecticut, but I
mhm.
didn't know this, and this was from years ago. So I don't know if that was the case then, but I know that I could have reported that I had no utilities and they were shut off, and he could have been in trouble for doing that.
Yeah, so a lot of it is like understanding there's resources out there and finding them instead of just feeling like you have
Yes,
no options.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that way with the domestic violence center. I kept thinking like, I wish I had known about this years ago, but in my head I thought, oh, that's for battered women only.
And
So
with
I don't really fit that because he doesn't
yes,
even do it that much. Like it's once in a while, so I
you
can't. And then
sound
afterwards, I was like, oh my God, there's like all these amazing resources. But I think part of what what matters here is women in particular in these situations. Like, think about when we first started this conversation, you're saying, I've done this. It's like we're so used to being really independent and juggling and managing that it's hard to ask for
Yeah.
help.
Because you feel shamed,
Mm-hmm.
first of all. And then you're also like, I gotta maintain this, that, and the third. And it's like you have so many tabs. Like people have said, you have a lot of tabs open. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes. I'm always. That's why the woman of many hats.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always having to manage so many different things, and then you become overwhelmed. That's the part of you like I feel so drained.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to do this. I don't want to be an advocate. I don't want to be an attorney and then be a mom and then be in a. It's like all of this. I got to do all of this at the same time. I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
It really is that. But it was something you just said that I was like, oh my God, I agree with. It was something you had just said. I can't remember what it was, but I'm like, yeah, I totally agree with it. When it comes back to me, I'll tell you. But I experienced the same thing. I can't remember what it was because I now want to touch base with what you just
Not
said.
asking for help, like being so managing everything, and or the shame
No,
about asking for
something
help.
you said before that. It slipped my mind.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, it'll come back to me. But yeah,
Yeah.
it really is shame. You feel like I don't want to tell anybody, so you kind
Mm-hmm.
of keep it quiet. Or then when you find someone that you can trust, you do share with them, but then they may not know how to help you, or they
Exactly.
do, but then it's like, okay, you're getting the help, but then you still hit a roadblock, and that happens
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And that's exactly what I definitely experienced, like just roadblock after roadblock, and I was like, I'm so tired and drained.
Yeah.
You're tired.
Yeah. So certain things have turned around though. And in your video, you went, I started seeing like luxury, like a car and then a luxury car and this elected official. I'm like, whoa, how
Yeah,
did you
it's
finally start getting the energy to do more than just survive?
um I kept doing stuff like this, like sharing my story, and then people were saying, "Oh, can you sit on this board?" So I ended up sitting on um, the board for New Horizons Shelter. Well, not necessarily the board, but like kind of like their conversations and being invited to
Mhm.
their meetings. And that's another domestic violence shelter that I actually was not a part of, and I did not know about it until after I came out of my situation. And I think it's because I wasn't homeless in Middletown.
Mhm.
So I ended up sharing my story there. I went to that. Um, I went to our community meetings at another community organization, which down the road I ended up becoming the youth director for them.
Wow.
While also,
Another hat.
yeah, but that was some years ago, and I led that. I was like grant funded to run a youth program because I also I worked at the high school, which is where it's like, and the students would hear my story, and I had students that would drive, and they was like, "Miss, we'll give you a ride," and I'm like, "What?"
Mhm.
Because I didn't have a car, and they would feel so bad knowing my story and knowing my kids. I had students
Mhm.
who were like, "Miss, we'll give you a ride to pick up and drop off." Okay.
Wow.
I think one of them actually had their parent give me a ride, and it's because they had experienced the same thing with their dad, and it was like,
Yeah.
wow. So I had students that were helping me, and then it was to the point where now we start advocating for housing because I had other students that had housing issues, and then their parents had domestic violence, and it's like I became so connected in these different spaces that I kind of created a little buzz myself. People was like, "You should run for office," and I was like, "Run for what? I've never ran for office in my life." Um, and I was asked to run for Board of Ed, but I worked for the Board of Ed, so I couldn't.
Mhm.
Then I was asked to run for either Common Council or Planning and Zoning, and I was torn between the two. And it wasn't until they asked me what issues would I focus on, and when I said the first issue was housing, with the second being business development, I stopped myself and was like, "Okay, I already know." Yep, Planning and Zoning. So with Planning and Zoning, we create housing. Like we just built not we built, but we approved a housing complex that just got built um,
Wow.
over the past couple of years. And so I went to the opening for it like a month ago. So it's
Uh-huh.
like to see stuff like that, I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, things like that. So it's all these different things. And then, sharing my story of the workforce issues, the transportation issues. And I'm doing it in spaces like testimonials at the legislative office building. And then I was a part of an organization as a single mom, as a parent volunteer. I now run that organization
Wow.
to this very day. And I was there and I happened to be on a panel and share my story of workforce related issues and all those things. And at the time, the commissioner for DOL, she was a deputy commissioner. She happened to be my senator when I lived in Meriden, but I never met her at the time. So when I told her, that I actually was in your jurisdiction at a point, and she heard my story, she's like, I need you a part of the governor's workforce council. Great.
Oh my
So
God.
I got on the Governor's Workforce Council in 2019, and now I'm actually one of the co-chairs for the Family Economic Mobility group
Oh my
under
God.
that. So it's like everything was like, oh, you should join this. You should do this. I'm like,
And
okay.
you
So
did it.
yeah,
And
I
you
did.
somehow
Yeah, I did.
managed it.
I
That's
did.
incredible.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really how it happened. But it was a lot of that. Like I said, me getting that job as far as, and it's called Middletown Work. So we work with single parents, and originally it was like single parents of color. Now we've kind of broadened it, just single parents in general, and it's
Mm-hmm.
helping them to have economic stability, basically, and helping them with all those different basic needs. Housing is a big one of them, and some parents, like I said, with domestic violence. So we case manage them, we help them and place them in different places, and so doing that, I'm like, I have a nice little salary. So it's like all of that.
That,
It's like, oh my God, I can afford my own home. And so I
that is
end up buying
amazing.
a
I mean,
home.
talk about like, I know
Yeah.
there's still obviously some significant issues, but to have like some justice, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. In that regard. And and that's another reason why when I was looking for my home, I would take my kids on, some of the tours with me. Sometimes I would do it behind their back. And then I'm big on like surprising them. So I would always surprise them with something. And I
Hmm.
actually surprised them with the house, and I recorded it and I posted it. And it was a producer through PBS who reached out to me and saw it. And so now I'm part of the documentary for the whole state of Connecticut on
Of
housing.
course you are.
Because she was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And so my kids are both in the video, so they came to my house, and my oldest son is, he's done some of the video with me, and then they have clips of me and my youngest son, him being so happy, like my mommy bought a house, like he remembered
Oh,
everything that I went through, even throughout the ordeal with his dad. He saw everything, so that was
wow.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talk about role model, like role
Mhm.
modeling for your children. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm going to keep working my butt off and I'm going to
Mhm.
figure out how to do it. And then you have.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
incredible.
Don't let anybody else design your story. You are the author of your own story.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to hear anyone complaining about like how awful things are. I mean, yeah, you can complain for a little while and then like, what are we going to do with
Action.
this?
Yes. Put it into action.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just words. But I put it
Yep.
into action. Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
obviously.
Yeah.
Well, Shanae, thank you so much. I'm so glad we
I
finally got to have this
know.
conversation. How can people find you, or what can you like? Is there anything that you can offer to people, or that they can
Yes.
ask you about?
So, one, you can follow me on Instagram
Hmm.
at MS Shanay Nicole. You can go to my website, ShanayFulton.com. You can purchase my book. You can see a little bit about me. You've heard about me tonight. And then I'll be on a panel for the documentary. I forgot the date, but I'll be posting something about it. I want to say it's the end of this month, and it'll be at EastCon. I can pull it up real quick. But yeah, I'll be on the panel for housing with some other legislators and things of that nature. But I'm excited.
Yeah.
When is it? Let's double check. Oh, yeah. Here it goes. It's gonna be actually, it's called the Unfreedom Inn. So the documentary is called Fighting for Home. It
Hmm.
was on PBS, and we're gonna be in New London at the Cummings Art Center at 4:15 starting, and
And what's the
that's in
date?
New London, Connecticut. I'm sorry.
What's the date?
It's gonna be on Monday, February 24th at
Okay.
4:15.
Wow. Excellent.
Yes.
Well, again, Shanae, like huge congratulations for like
Thank you.
achievement after achievement after achievement. And of course, like awful what your ex is doing with your son, but wow, are you making the most of the rest of your life, you
I
know?
have to,
Yeah.
you have to keep pressing on, and, one day he'll realize that's not okay, that's not cool, and, he'll share with me his quirks and qualms, and if he has any disappointments, he has any questions for me, I will definitely answer them for him. Have no problem with that. I had to come to peace with that. Like, he may, be upset with me with something, I don't know, but I would love to answer his questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's time, so let's see what
Yeah,
happens. I feel like
yeah,
with that kind of stuff that it's always important to have hope.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again so much, and I'm so glad that we finally got a chance to meet and to talk.
Me too. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Both
All
meet.
right. Talk to you
Okay.
later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.